Hi, I'm Sherri with Found with Trish and Sherri. And Trish is here and we have a special guest. Hi, Trish.
Hi.
And tonight we have Robyn with us. Welcome, Robyn.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you for being here. And Robyn comes with a different perspective, which we love, from the birth mom's perspective of adoption, which completes that triangle of adoption. Imagine being 17 years old and pregnant and told you have no choice but to give your baby away. No celebration, no support, just silence, and the expectation to forget. But what happens if you never forget? So, Robyn, can you take us back to when you were 17? What was happening, and how did the decision for adoption unfold?
Yeah. So, boy, it was a complicated time for me. My family had moved from rural Michigan to the Bay Area of California. And so that's a part of my story is that the sex ed that I'd gotten up until that point was just don't. And so I really did not have good information. And fun fact, I actually went on the pill before I had sex with my boyfriend because I'm a very responsible person. But I completely blacked out when the nurse was talking to me because I was so embarrassed. And so when she gave me this pack of pills and told me I had to go get a new pack every month, I thought, well, how often does she think I'm going to do this? So yeah, that was not a good strategy to just take one every time that we had sex, which by the way, teenage sex is so overrated, right? And I grew up in this super fundamentalist church where like good girls never, and I told all my friends, like, you guys, this was like 48 seconds of stupid, embarrassing nothing. Like, don't do it. Anyway, all that to say, I started getting headaches. I was exhausted. I was nauseous, and I didn't know what was wrong with me. So I went to our family doctor thinking I had some kind of brain cancer because I'm dramatic that way. And he said, when was your last period? I said, well, I'm not pregnant. I'm on the pill. And he explained that I actually was pregnant. And boy, I was just shook. It was, it really shocked me. Anyway, so how did I get from there to giving the baby up for adoption? When I told my parents, I actually got good advice about telling my parents, which was expect them to be really mad at you and disappointed. Like, you can't couch this as any kind of good news. Just tell them, just blurt it out, which is what I did. And they were really upset. And then immediately went to, this will be a blessing for another family that can't have children. And that was sort of the narrative. And I was in high school, and I knew when I found I was pregnant, I wanted that baby, right? I did. I felt a little bit of weird happiness, right? That I can't explain. Like, oh, wow, this is cool. Even though it was terrible, it was, it's a privilege to host life in our body. And I was amazed that I had this pregnancy. But that was my narrative, that I'll give the baby up for adoption. And that was sort of a way to make people less mad at me. Because my teachers, everybody was upset. I was a really good student.
So this is your junior year in high school?
Mm-hmm.
And what time of year is it? Are you pregnant the entire school year?
Pretty much. This was kind of the next year, all January through. And it was
of your senior year.
Oh, it was rough.
Oh,
it was rough. And my boyfriend at the time, he was just young. He was young. He was 17. God help him. I told him I was on the pill. I showed him the pills. And you better know that the boys I raised knew that story from a young age.
Yes.
So I have a lot of empathy for him now. I think early on I was mad that he couldn't do more or step up more, but we were both kids, and we both lived in pretty dysfunctional families. And that is a big part of that story too. And when I say like I had to give the baby up, some of that was society telling me you're not good enough.
Mhm.
Anytime I said I'm giving the baby up for adoption, I was met with, "Oh, thank goodness." Like, "Phew," like, "Oh, this baby's gonna be so much better off, and clearly you're not ready for this." And that message really stuck with me for a long time that I'm not
How did it
mother
make you feel?
material. At the time, it sort of was oddly validating that I really wanted to do the right thing, and so that's what I was focused on, but it made me feel really inadequate, which I was. It just fed into every insecurity I had that I wasn't enough for this baby. And so, the hard part of that is that that didn't go away after I gave the
Mm.
baby up. It stayed with me. And that's a decade later when I had twins and felt, again, completely inadequate to be a mom, even though I was married and in a completely
Mhm.
different situation.
Because you were spoon-fed that, and you trusted it, and you believed it and internalized it.
I did. I internalized it. And even now, sometimes somebody will say, "Wow, you're a great mom," or "Look at your kids." And inside, I'll think, I often will say I can't take too much credit or too much blame, right? In sort of a funny way, because I use humor to deflect from uncomfortable topics.
Mhm.
And as we do. But the reality is, I never felt like I'm not going to take any credit for my kids' accomplishments. That's all them.
Mhm.
Um, though I worked really, really hard to be a good mom. I know
Right,
that's true. But I never felt like I was enough.
right. You are not the first birth mom that I've heard say that being told, you're not adequate fed into their lives when they had other children. That's
Yes. Being pregnant and giving birth, it changes your identity forever.
Mhm.
And and that's just a part of my motherhood story. And that's
Right,
another wild ride, right? You give birth and then you're suddenly supposed to go back to being a teenager and care about blue jeans and what to wear to the prom,
right.
and you just don't. So I just felt like from that point on, I didn't fit in.
Yeah,
Anywhere I was, I just didn't fit.
I get that. I get that. So I saw you say in something that you posted that
Mhm.
people oddly offered you money for your baby.
Oh gosh, yes, that was, horrible.
Yeah.
So, because I was open about the fact that I was planning to give the baby up for adoption, and I know the right way to say it now is to place a child for adoption,
Hmm.
but in my story, it really did feel like a giving up. Um, so that's what I used, that language.
Hmm.
So my chemistry teacher in high school, um, I he I went after school for tutoring because I was flunking chemistry, and he said, "My wife and I are trying to adopt." And I'm like, "Oh, that's great." Because he's like, "I think this is a great thing that you're doing." And I'm like, "Thanks. Like, can you help me with the math?" And and he gave me his file with him and his wife, and he said, the next day he said, "Did you look at my file?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, we're prepared to help you with your expenses up to $10,000. And I'm just a kid in school, and I'm
Right.
like, "Ew."
Right.
Like, I just immediately felt like throwing up. Like, is he offering me $10,000 for my baby? That's gross.
Yes.
Um, but he actually was not the only one. There
Mm.
were people in our church that had a sister or a relative trying to adopt, and these private attorneys would contact me because I was too polite just to say, "Leave me alone." I would get
Right.
contacted by the attorney who would offer financial compensation for my living expenses, and I'm like, "Well, I'm living with my parents, and I work part-time at a flower shop, like, I don't have any living expenses."
Right.
Um I just knew that I was skeeved out by that, and
Yes.
that really prompted my decision to, um when I did get further along in the pregnancy, I looked in the yellow pages for a public adoption agency, which at the
Mhm.
time in California was Children's Home Society.
Mhm.
They did mostly CPS work, taking kids out of homes, but they did facilitate just public adoptions. And
Mhm.
I called and asked, how much does it cost to adopt a baby? And they said, well, it doesn't. It doesn't cost anything. I said, they don't have to pay anything. And I said, and they said, well, $500 for a home study. And I said, okay, cool. Like I'm expecting a baby.
Right.
Because the money thing really weirded me out. And I didn't, morally, I just didn't feel like a family should need to be rich to adopt a child. I didn't think that instinctively made somebody a better or worse parent.
Mhm.
And so yeah, that's why I chose a public adoption agency.
Mhm. And so, how did they support or fail you?
So, I actually just didn't return their phone calls, so they didn't do anything. I was just kind of in denial that I was actually having a baby, so I avoided answering the phone and just pretended this was I'm just gonna be pregnant for forever, and I ended up going into preterm labor about a month early,
Mm.
and and again, you don't know what you don't know. My doctor was super old school. He also wanted me to place the baby through him because he worked with infertile couples and he had couples that wanted to adopt the baby. So everywhere I went, people wanted the
Wow.
baby. Isn't that weird?
That's wild.
You know what
And
really
I
strikes me is there's such an imbalance of power in this situation, and
Yes.
that they're coming to you with this without your parents or your guardian or
yes,
father
A
of the baby
social worker, something.
going
yes.
specifically just to you. That imbalance of power just seems so manipulative.
It
It
does.
really was. And I didn't see it at the time, but now I'm a high school teacher and I'm like, oh my goodness, like, ugh,
They're
gross.
babies. They're
Yeah, they're
babies.
they're babies, and nobody
Robin
had
and I
any
both
business.
Robin and I both teach high school, and I think about that sometimes when different
Mhm.
situations happen and they're just babies.
Yes, just kids. So
Mhm.
when I went into labor early, I didn't know I was in labor. I just had this horrible back pain and I'm all swollen. And I thought maybe I was in labor, but I waited until 9 o'clock to call the doctor, even though this happened all night long, because I'd been taught like you don't call people before 9 a.m.
Yep.
And nobody had said, like, well, when you're having a baby, you call anytime all night long. I didn't know that. I was, again, you don't know what you don't know. So my doctor, when I
Right.
got to the hospital, was really angry that I hadn't called in the middle of the night. But like he had never said, call me at 2 a.m.
Mhm.
So I didn't. So I remember being at the hospital being yelled at because I had done it wrong. And that
Oh.
was
You didn't get
really,
any sex education and you didn't get any pregnancy education.
I did, like, I read book, like, I'm a reader, so I read the what to expect when you're expecting,
Mhm.
but it again, it didn't really prepare me for what I was gonna go through in the hospital.
Mhm.
Um, my doctor, I thought was great, but now looking back, he was not so great.
Mhm.
Um, he was very much old school and of the opinion that I should be sort of punished for my sins, right? Like we're going to let her suffer a little bit kind of
Mm.
attitude. And I had a wonderful nurse who really became my advocate and ally. My mother was with me. My mom had a lot of mental illness and again, a very dysfunctional home. And so at one point, the nurse asked me privately, do you want your mother here? And I said, no. She says, okay, I'll take care of it. I'm like, oh my God, you could do
You could
that?
do that?
I don't know what she said to my mother, but it was such a relief to have her out of the room
Wow.
because she
Mm.
was stressing me out. Um, but you know, this nurse stayed with me, and I told her, you know, I want all the pain medicine you can give me as quick as you can give it to me. Like, this is horrible. And so she told the doctor, and out in the hallway, I heard him say, well, I think she can wait a little bit. And the nurse said, we're going to get this epidural on board now. And she didn't leave my side through that whole
Wow.
process, which I realized had to have been longer than her shift. So looking back, I just think she was my angel, just
Yeah.
sent so I wasn't alone.
Shout out to the nurses that are listening.
For
Thank you.
real.
Yes.
Because she really had a huge impact on my life
Yes.
just by being there, by not really talking about the situation. She knew I was planning to give the baby up for adoption, but it wasn't something she was bringing up like, oh, you should do this, or you shouldn't do this, or you're wonderful, or you're terrible. She was just my nurse
Mm-hmm.
who was advocating for me to have pain medication, which is exactly what I needed in that moment.
Right. So when the baby's born, then
Yeah,
did you hold the baby?
I did. I held the
Okay.
baby, and then I actually had a medical crisis. So I had toxemia, and my blood pressure went through the roof, and I had a
Mm.
seizure, and the baby was whisked off, and I lost about 4 days after that.
Oh gosh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Right.
Yeah, it was really scary. It was really, really scary. So when I woke up, I remember I was starving and somebody gave me a grilled cheese sandwich, and all I remember is like, did anybody wash my hands? Did I wash my hands after holding that baby?
Aw.
But the baby was still in the hospital at that point, because I had not made any real plans. And so the baby was at the hospital, so I had them bring the baby into the room. My boyfriend was there, and we held the baby and cried and kind of had our moment of like, could we possibly do this? Is there any way? And I remember we kind of wrote down a crude budget, like he worked part-time at Macy's and I worked part-time at the flower shop, and could we afford diapers kind of conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And then it got real with talking about our moms just not being really available to help us.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately that was our decision. We're like, we can't do this to this child. But there's really nothing like, when I held my own baby, I remember just thinking how they just fit in my arms perfectly. Like there's just something so natural about that. And the giving up just was completely unnatural. And there's no way to really describe that moment of leaving the hospital without the baby. But we had the social worker come. I called the agency back and they sent a social worker. And how did she help me or fail me? I think she was fine. She did. There wasn't the motive to like, we got to get your baby. Like I knew that it would be okay for me to keep the baby, but I just didn't know how that would ever be possible. And I'd already heard that I'm a terrible mother. Not equipped. My parents couldn't help me. His parents couldn't help me. So what could I do?
Right.
And I still look back and I think, would I have made a different decision today? Maybe, but I really was up against a wall and I needed just some practice. I just needed somebody to say, let me help you for a year or 2 years. And I didn't have that. So
Right.
the baby went into foster care for 6 weeks, which was the time needed before I could sign official papers. And I made sure my boyfriend signed them first because I had this odd fear that he wasn't gonna, and then he would take the baby. So we went together and he did it first and then I did it. And from there, I feel like I just went home and dissociated for the next decade.
And what were you told then by these people in your life, these adults?
Not a lot. That it would be, that it was hard for me, but my baby was going to be so much better off. They were going to have a great life and have great parents, and that I would be able to move on. I could forget and just move on with my life and just know that my baby was in a great place and that I could just feel really, really good about that. But that just wasn't what happened. And from there, like nobody talked about it. Like I went home and my dad had built some shelves in the garage and didn't bring it up. Nobody talked about it at all. So it was almost like it had just never happened. We were also in a church community because we always went to church a lot. And nobody talked about it there either. Like it was just like invisible. And this is
Wow.
that's a whole journey. I got kicked out of the youth group informally because, I was
So
going to
now
be
you're
a
so now
bad
you have
influence.
religious trauma. Add religious
Oh, a
trauma.
lot of religious trauma.
Yep.
That's another podcast.
Yep.
Um,
I got you on that one. Yeah, me
there's
too.
no hate like Christian love.
Christian love. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I say that with some humility because I feel like the people in my life that have most hurt me have been Christians, but
Mhm.
also the people in my life that have most helped me have been Christians.
Okay.
And so they both belong, right?
Right.
And I don't think
Mhm.
we can judge a group by,
Right.
as much as it's easy to cast an entire group of people as terrible, it's not
Right.
fair to do that.
Right. Right.
Um, so I went on with my life.
Okay. So you fast forward and you get married and have kids?
I do. So it took me a long time to finish college. I was really depressed. But I do end up meeting my husband and we get married and life is pretty good, right? And
And did you
we,
tell him? You told him about the baby?
I did. I
Good for
did tell
you.
him, and that was a whole thing.
Mhm.
There's nothing like dating after you've had this experience because when do you tell somebody that you've had a baby and given them up for adoption? If you tell
Mhm.
them on the first date, you're oversharing. Even
Mhm.
the third date, it's a little bit much. But
Right.
then you wait too long, and then, well, why didn't you tell me earlier? You've been hiding this. It was very awkward, and I knew I should tell him, but I didn't know when, so I didn't. We've been dating a good 9 months to a year, and I really liked him, and I knew that I should have told him already.
Mhm.
And we went for a walk one day and then sat by this coffee shop that we liked, and he took my hand and he said, "Robyn, I really like you a lot, and I could see us having a future together, but I just feel like there's this wall between us. I feel like you've got this big secret that you're not telling me, and I
Wow,
don't know what it
Taylor.
is." And that was my opening to be like, actually, yes. And then we talked for a long time, and he was so gracious and so um, loving and just he's like, I don't know why this you feel like you should keep this a secret from anybody, like that I don't see anything to be ashamed of here, like just so accepting. And as we went on and got married, one of his things is, I would really like it if you would share this with my family. He's so close to his family, and I am also very close to his family. He's like, before we get married, I'd like you to share this with them if you're okay with that. And I said, sure. And then he said, if we ever have children, I don't want this to be a secret from them either.
Mm.
Wow.
And so I said, okay. And that really pushed me into some healing
Mhm.
and being open that helped me long term
You
because
sound
I was
like
met
an
with,
unusual partner.
yes, very much so, and just very emotionally aware. And I'm so grateful for that. Like, I feel
Yeah.
like if anybody gets credit for our kids being great, it's him, because he's great.
Mhm. Mhm. So what then leads you to search?
Yeah. So after I had the twins and I was just struggling with just inadequacy, right? I almost killed myself trying to breastfeed those twins because I was going to be a good mom.
Right.
Just a lot of stuff, major postpartum depression, and found a therapist and started working through some of the grief that I had never dealt with. Because that's really what was coming up for me was a
Mhm.
lot of grief. And from there, I started kind of healing and growing as a mom and just in life. Um, and as my child got closer to 18, I think they were like 15 or 16. And I thought, I wonder if they're going to find me when they turn 18. And so I started Googling different variations of, do adopted children want to be found by their birth mothers? And I never found the answer to that question, but I did find some birth mom support groups,
Okay.
which I hadn't really ever considered. I'd never met another birth mother. And I had never considered that there were any kind of supports out there.
Mm-hmm.
But I ended up going to a retreat for birth moms. And it was just sort of life changing and it really eye opening and started, I would say that's really being a part of those groups is what helped me to finally let go of the shame of my experience, in part because when you're sitting across from somebody, listening to their story, you have so much empathy and compassion. You're not thinking, wow, what a slut, or wow, this, I can't believe they would. No, you have just compassion for them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, if I can have compassion for them and their story is so much like mine, why do I have no compassion for myself? So
Right.
it started to sort of help me understand just how to be more gracious with myself, um, around the whole experience. And as I started talking to other birth moms and some that were much further along in the journey, and I said, I wonder if they'll want to find me. And and I kind of had to come to grips with a few things like, well, what will happen if they find you and you find out they didn't have a better life? What if they didn't have a good life at all? How is that going to feel for you? And I had never considered that because the narrative that kept me going is this feels terrible, but my child has had a better life.
Mm-hmm.
And so that gave me pause and I sort of just worked on that piece of it in these groups and in therapy and in talking to people. And it was quite a while before I did decide to search. 18 came and went, the years went by. And one day I woke up and I thought, you know what? I'm never going to stop wondering how this person is. And I just wanted to know that they were okay more than anything. So I found a search angel actually on the internet who helped me. And I had some non-identifying information that they used to track them down pretty quickly. Like I literally thought maybe someday this will happen. And
Mm-hmm.
I woke up and like, oh, here they are. So I
Wow.
shut my computer and I didn't tell anybody for like 2 weeks because I just started spinning.
Yeah.
My equilibrium was off.
Yeah.
Um, I call it like a vertigo of the soul where everything just turns upside down. And that also helped me empathize with my child because I'm like, I'm just gonna just knock on their door and turn their life upside down. And I don't know, did they know they were adopted? What do they know about me? I know the information that their parents had, but you just don't know how that
Right.
worked out. So I did, I worked on a letter. I spent a lot of time agonizing. I included pictures to let them know you've got 3 half brothers. And I just wrote an introductory letter. This is me and this is our life. These are your half siblings. I reached out to the birth father. I friended him on Facebook because I wanted to make sure he wasn't an asshole. I hope I can say that word
Yeah,
on
of course
here.
you can.
Just because I thought, well, it's kind of common. Maybe if I find my child,
Mm-hmm.
maybe they're like, well, what about dad? Like,
Yep.
who's he? So I thought, I just want to make sure I'm not introducing somebody terrible into
Mm-hmm.
this person's life. And I'm like, okay, this seems reasonable. And he kind of had an answer of like, well, I think if they want to find us, they will. And I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of moved on from that. I had a good friend who was adopted who said, I feel like my birth mom really gave up on me and got rid of me. Why would I go looking for her? And
Mm-hmm.
that's a different perspective, right? And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I just need to do this. But I was able to send just a complete medical history because I feel, at
Yes.
the time that I gave him up, nothing was wrong with anybody. We were great. But
Right.
then there's heart disease and hypertension and all kinds of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I just felt like, regardless of if the relationship continued, I just wanted them to have that basic life
Yeah,
information.
Priceless
Um,
information.
it is.
right.
It's
It's just
huge.
important. I feel so strongly everybody should know their history.
Yes.
And there's no strings attached to it, right? You don't have to be my friend to get it. You can just
Mm-hmm.
have it because you're
Mm-hmm.
human and I'm human. And it's interesting because the search angel was very like, oh, don't send that like that because you want them to. It's like, no, this is not, it truly wasn't about that.
Right.
And when I said in the letter, like, it is okay if you don't want any contact with me, like, that's fine. Like, I'll live with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't. They emailed almost immediately and said, this is a huge surprise, but it's not a bad surprise. And we were able to get to know each other through email and then phone and then visits. It's a roller coaster of emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that first year is such a honeymoon of like, we have so much in common. It's crazy. Things I never thought were genetic that are like, what do you
Yes.
mean you
we
spend all
found
your
you.
time?
Yes.
Like, really blew my mind. So,
Right.
we just all of that. And then I would say from there, just really getting to know each other as
Mm-hmm.
friends, building a strong friendship
Mm-hmm.
because it's such a unique relationship because I'm birth mom. We are related. I birthed you, but I never mothered you,
Mm-hmm.
right? My single act of motherhood was signing a piece of paper. And so it's a different relationship
Mm-hmm.
than I have with my boys that I've raised. It's a wonderful, beautiful relationship. And it is very maternal. I have all that maternal energy, but it's really hard to describe to somebody. There also isn't as big of an age gap, right? It's
Right.
just so many things.
Right.
And what I love about our relationship is that we early on decided we don't have to follow a script. It doesn't have to go in this neat little box of this is what this is supposed to look like. We can just carve out this relationship between the two of us
Mm-hmm.
that is what we both want, and we don't have to justify it to anybody.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Building the history, it's very weird when
Mm-hmm.
you have somebody you're so instantly close to.
Yes.
And you have this intimate relationship of being, mother and child.
Yes.
You have no history for decades.
No shared
and
history.
It's a very odd idea
Mm-hmm.
and an odd feeling.
Mm-hmm.
But it's, for us, I think, as Sherri said, called it building the history.
Yeah.
It's from here that you build that history. And the more you build that
Yes.
history, the closer your relationship can get.
Mm-hmm.
But it is never going to be the same. And I think that's one thing that having talked to some adoptees and, birth parents and that,
Mm-hmm.
I think coming to realize that and going into it, realizing that would be very helpful, that
Mm-hmm.
they're never going to be mommy. It's never going to be daddy. But if you can have some relationship, you can build whatever kind of relationship
Mm-hmm.
you want.
Yes.
You just build it from here with those expectations. And that's one of the things that's really helped me is, no, I don't expect, I don't need to be mothered. I got one of those.
I have a mother. Right.
Yeah.
But I want you in my life. I love you. I'm so happy that, they're part of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a kind of a different relationship. But I think the more
Mm-hmm.
that we have conversations like this, and one of the reasons we started this podcast at all was to find and share those stories of building after. It's not, we always say it's not like you see on TV. It's not, we found each other and everything is now
Right.
perfect. It's, we found each other.
Right.
What now?
Now what?
Yeah.
Well, and so then we wrote a book about it. And the book is like, 10% of actually finding them. And then the other 90% is about the relationships because,
Yes.
it doesn't just happen automatically. And there's highs and there's lows and there's, some of them, trauma, and some of them don't even work out. And how can I talk to my siblings about our mutual parent if my feelings aren't maybe the best feelings in a certain situation, or that they didn't have the healthiest relationship with that parent? So complicated.
It
And
is.
when you said that you met other birth mothers, and how it validated you and how empathetic you were, that's really what we're trying to do with the podcast. Because come on, guys, it's 2026. Drop the stigma.
Yeah.
And the secrecy, because I think that's where the damage happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so
Yeah.
much of the damage. And I think personality-wise, my child and I are very similar in that we're both sarcasm is our love language,
Right.
and we deflect hard feelings through humor and just lots of that style. But also there's a directness there that we can say the hard thing or ask the hard question. And I think that really has served us well, right? To say, hey, what is this like for you? What is this rhythm like? Like if I call you once a week, is that too much? Is it
Right.
just right? Would you rather text? Like just to be really upfront and open about what is our relationship? What do we want it to look like?
And that's hard to do. It really is hard.
It is.
Thing could be a possible rejection or an overstep, and there's so much
Yes.
fear involved in that. It really takes guts for people that do
Yes.
that. It's difficult.
Yeah. But
Well, and you go ahead,
Go
Trish.
ahead.
I was gonna say, how did your family react? Your husband, your twins?
Yeah.
What
They were
happened?
really
Your parents?
Yeah.
Were your parents still alive at that point?
So my mom was still alive. She actually died shortly after I went to meet them for the first time, and I flew to Oregon to see my mom first. And I mentioned she had severe mental illness, and she made a comment like, would you ever want to find that the baby that you gave up, that I made you give up, and blah, blah, crying, making it about her. And I looked her in the eyes, I said, nope. Because I thought, I'm just not introducing this chaos to my child.
Yep.
And I just didn't.
Good for you. Good for you.
And I let them know that, like, this is the grandma, but I don't.
Right.
I'm going to protect you from that. My dad, I didn't involve my parents at all, actually, but my husband and my children very much so. Like they were on board before I searched, and I had been open with the kids all the way through, which was challenging, right? It started with just a picture on my desk of this baby that they didn't know, and they'd ask, like, who's that? And I'd say, wow, that's my child that I grew in mommy's tummy, but I was young and couldn't take care of him. And so another family took care of them, and that's called adoption, right? And they were probably toddlers when I said that. And then years later, they would ask different questions every few years. And I remember when junior high hit, one of my boys said, so when you got pregnant in high school, you had sex with someone, not dad. So I was like, yep. And then when they were in high school themselves and that same age, they're like, when you got pregnant in high school, that was a really big deal.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, it was. Because I'd always sort of minimize that part of it. You don't want to show your kids this broken side of you. But I'm like, it wasn't.
When they're too young to handle it.
Exactly. So it's been interesting, but they were really, really supportive of everybody knowing each other and the truth. And actually that openness was really key for my child being comfortable. They had a sibling who was adopted where that wasn't the case in the reunion, and it was a big secret. And that was just really painful to be introduced to people as a friend,
Right.
We found, though, with a lot of people in the triad that the thing that hurts them, I think, most of all is the dishonesty, the covering up, the keeping hidden. That if you're adopted from birth, there's never a moment where you have to go, oh, and your whole life changes. If you, now, again, age appropriate. But,
right, totally.
Excuse me, but, and I think for everybody involved in this that I've ever talked to has said that the people that have always had it as part of their lives have been able to handle it better without shock and the same. I mean, there's always going to be issues, but I just feel the more people we talk to, the more we see that's just so important.
It really is. And it's important for us, and the way we tell our story matters. But you're right. It matters to society, culturally, right? If the only stories people hear are terrible, they're going to think, oh, that's terrible. I know I have
Mhm.
a story. I was shopping for a birth mom retreat. I was buying groceries at Walmart, and I had my, nonprofit card that we didn't have to pay tax on anything. And the cashier's like, oh, where are you going? There's a lot of junk food. And I was like, yeah, going on a retreat. And oh, that's great. And what's this group here? And I'm like, oh, we're a group of birth moms and we support other birth moms after they place the child for adoption. Or I didn't say we're birth moms. I just said we help birth moms after. And she's like, oh, wow. Like they gave the baby up for adoption. I said, yeah. She's like, oh, that'll fuck you right up. And then she said, how'd you get involved with them? And I'm like, well, I'm a birth mom.
Yeah.
Excuse my language, but it was just such a funny moment.
No, that's great. She knew.
She knew, but
Yeah.
also I really try to be open about my story,
Yes.
in part because I want people to realize, like, we're just people. For every
Right.
person you know who's adopted, they have a birth mother, and they're probably just a normal person
Mhm.
that you meet wherever you go, at work and church and school, and
Mhm.
you just don't announce it because it makes
Right.
I share more than I probably should, but even when I got comfortable with it, it makes other people so desperately uncomfortable that you don't want to bring it up. Like if people ask me how many kids I have and I say 4, ooh, that's complicated. And I'll say, "Oh, I
Mhm.
have 3 that I've parented, and then I have an older child that
Yep.
I had placed for adoption." And they're like,
Mhm.
"Oh." And then I'm dealing with their uncomfortable feelings around it.
Correct. Correct.
So it's
Good
usually
But
not worth it. I
but
just
I
say 3.
think I think that also leads to erasing some of that stigma
It
and
does.
taking the secrecy away. Like when it's not a big deal, then you can have those conversations, that people have questions about, or
Yes.
they know somebody who went through an experience. I want you to tell me about, I did my homework, the
Yeah.
Birth Parent Support Alliance and
Yes.
birthmomsempowered.org. I want you to tell me about both of those, please.
Okay. So, Birth Parent Support Alliance used to
Mhm.
be On Your Feet Foundation, and that is the group that I found when I was searching for, do adopted people want to be found? So that's a support group that I found to be so, so helpful on my journey, and was very involved with them for a number of years. A couple of years ago, or about a year ago, there goes my thing,
That's
sorry.
okay.
Um, we were just going in different directions from them.
Yeah.
And so the group that I was leading, there's a small group of women, me, Vicky, and Cher, 3 of us,
Mhm.
that decided to just start doing our own thing
Mhm.
through Birth
That's who
Moms
you were
Empowered.
shopping for. Yes.
That's what, yes.
Okay.
And so we started this organization early 2026. And it really exists just to create community for birth moms. And I should say, the Birth Mom Support Alliance, they're not doing anything terrible. Like, they're
Great.
great. They're just trying to do so much. And we're just
Yes.
wanting to do this little bit. Like,
Mhm.
we just want to build relationships with birth moms,
Mhm.
connect them to each other, connect them to the resources that are available around the
Mhm.
country, do some online support, and then do some in-person meetups.
Okay.
So we just are, let's simplify, and it's all birth moms that are doing the work together.
And is that just one, is that online? Is that one place in the country?
Mhm.
How do people, cuz we're going to put it in the bio for this
Awesome. So Birth
podcast.
Moms Empowered is, you go online,
Mhm.
and we're off to a slow start, so be patient with us. We didn't
Mhm.
want to tackle too much because we all work full time. We're not
Right?
getting paid to do this work. We're just volunteers. But I do a monthly support group online, the first Wednesday of every month, for women
Okay.
specifically who placed in a closed adoption, because it's just such a unique experience.
Mhm.
Um, so it's an older crowd, and we just talk about our experiences, and over the years have gotten to know each other well. We
Mhm.
do an in-person retreat in the fall. I think in October we're going to do one, and it'll be in the Chicago area, in the Chicago suburbs.
Okay.
So people can fly into Chicago. We're actually going to do a meetup this summer in St. Louis, which is just going to be for fun. It's not going to be any kind of heavy thing, but we're excited about that.
Right. And getting to know each other and know that you're not alone, and then just healing and validation and shared experiences
and friendship.
Yes.
Right? So these people have become my closest friends. And honestly, just to be able to, it's peer support. Like, I'm not a therapist, I'm a school librarian, though we do have a therapist as one of us. Cher is a social worker therapist.
That's perfect.
But it's peer support. So the goal is hear other people's stories. If there's someone you connect with, call them, right? You can call and say, hey, it's my kid's birthday next week and I'm struggling, right? So we're not trying to be a one-stop shop.
Wait a minute. So you just touched on something that I'm curious about.
Oh, yeah.
So I always imagined, we tell ourselves these narratives, right? So I had told myself that the day my birth mother found out she was pregnant with me was the worst day of her life, which she has since said it was actually the best day, somewhat like what you said. She was bringing a new life and all of this. And then I always thought, okay, here comes my birthday. She's going to think about me. And on my birthday, I was like, wherever she is in the universe, she's thinking about me at least today.
Yeah.
Tell me how birthdays were.
She did.
So for me, I thought about my child every day of their life. I never had a day that I didn't think about
So that
them.
narrative that you were sold, that just ignore it, it'll
Move
go
on.
away.
No.
Didn't work.
No.
I don't think we've met anybody who said that worked.
No.
Agreed.
And I had a profound moment in therapy, and this is before reunion, and I was expressing some grief around the adoption, and my therapist said, Robyn, are you ready to let go of this grief? Do you think you're ready to start letting go of the grief? And I looked at him and I said, no, I'm not letting go of this grief, because the grief is all I have. If I let go of the grief, we have no connection, because there's no relationship. So, and it helped me reframe that grief as a beautiful thing. Like, the fact that I am grieving and sad means that there's so much love and connection there that never went away. And that's beautiful. And I'm going to honor that.
Yes.
So birthdays always were hard. Mother's Day was really probably the hardest day for me.
Really?
Yep. So
even when you had other kids?
Yes. Okay. Especially when I had other kids.
Because you knew what it could have been.
Well, and everybody wanted to celebrate me. And yet I felt like I wasn't really good enough as a mother, or I would have 4. Right. And so the fact that I had so desperately failed one child, it didn't matter that I hadn't failed 3. Inside, I felt like, I am a failure. And so Mother's Day was a day I did not go to church. I love my husband, because he respected, when I had the twins, he's like, what do you want to do for Mother's Day? And I'm like, I just want a day off. I just want to sleep. So I went to a hotel by myself and just slept. And then on Mother's Day,
do that next year.
Well, he took the kids over to his mom's and they had a lovely time. And then I came home and I ended up going to the movies with a friend, and that became my tradition. Was I went to a Mother's Day movie, because movies are so distracting. You can't sit in a movie and think about yourself. You just think about the movie. So that became part of my ritual. But I always had to make space for some grief on Mother's Day. And slowly that evolved into being part of the family celebration and feeling good about that and being able to accept my kids' gifts. But it's funny, one of my boys said in one year, like, oh, they were going to go on a scout camp out or something. And they're like, well, it's a Mother's Day weekend. They're like, our mom doesn't like to be with us on Mother's Day. And I realized how different that is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Has that improved since you have been in reunion?
Yes, and I would say even
Mhm.
before then, just in with therapy and time and my own kids getting older and that relationship developing, absolutely. Though I
Mhm.
still go to the movies every year, but it's not because
Mhm.
I have to, it's because it's a fun tradition.
Right. Right. So, Robyn, you're a librarian. What books are we all
Mhm.
reading? We
Oh,
read The Girls That Went Away. We did a book
yes.
review on that. We kind of picked up The Primal Wound, but we didn't get very far with it.
It's a
What
tough
else are
one.
we I've
Relinquished by Gretchen Sisson.
Okay,
Have we
Trish.
read that one?
Okay.
Nope.
Relinquished?
Nope,
That's a
not
hard
yet.
one. It's
Well,
Okay.
good.
now we have our challenge.
Um, that's a good one. Adoption Unfiltered. I like
Okay.
that one because it presents all three people in the triad, the different perspectives of adoptees, adoptive parents, and birth parents. I like that blend.
You know, adopted parents. I lately have been really thinking a lot about the adopted parents specifically who have struggled with fertility and the trauma that they're bringing into adoptions with that issue and
Yeah.
wanting healing for them. Okay, so go ahead. So the book,
No,
yeah, I
it's
just wanted to say
interesting,
that.
right? And expectations. We all bring expectations into motherhood of
Mhm,
ourselves, of our
mhm.
children, of what we think a family is like. And
Mhm.
that
What a
is just
baby is like,
oh,
because a baby
baby.
is not a blank slate.
No, I'll be clear about that.
Yes.
No, it's not. It's not a
Yes.
blank slate. And I'll be honest, back in the 90s, that's what I thought. I'm like, oh,
Mhm,
well, you give a newborn baby to a family, and whatever they pour into that child
mhm.
is who they become.
I think
And
people still believe that. I think that's the majority belief today.
yeah. And honestly, having twins cured me of that, right? Because I have these two babies raised identically,
Mhm.
and they could not be more different from each other,
Mm.
right? There's just and they were given so many of the same opportunities. But then
Yeah,
I remember them out on the soccer field, and one is scoring goals and the other is picking flowers. It's like
yeah,
it just and then meeting my child, oh my goodness, so much
yeah.
that is so similar, between us. It's crazy.
Okay,
So
so I derailed us. So we said
sorry,
relinquished.
books.
Yeah, books.
Relinquished,
Relinquished. What was the second
um,
one? We're gonna put these names in the bio
adoption
as well.
yeah, Adoption Unfiltered.
Okay.
And then this is a little off the beaten track, but I think it's called Children of the Flower Moon, and
Oh,
I've heard of
it's
that.
Trisha's
it's a
nodding her head.
story about by an investigative journalist exploring Chinese adoption. And
Mm.
it's so interesting. I didn't know much about it going into reading the book, and it was
Mhm.
so eye-opening. Um, and of course, the one-child policy that China had,
Mhm.
I just assumed, these children being adopted were from China were because they couldn't keep those extra kids that they had. But the story is so different from that, and that may be a part of that story, but another piece is that families in rural China would, leave the baby with a relative and go work to make money to pay the fine. So they would have more kids, but in
Mhm.
the meantime, sometimes those children would be stolen,
Mhm.
kidnapped, and then essentially sold
Wow.
to families in America. And this book
Around the
in parti
world.
Yeah.
yes.
So what we
So
haven't said here, Robyn, that I don't know that
yeah.
you know, is that Trish has a daughter that she adopted from China.
Oh,
And
wow.
that was one of the reasons we researched our agency so hard was to
Yes.
make sure that we had as much as was possible legitimacy.
Mhm.
Um,
Yes.
and they also had a lot of and again, this is probably another podcast at some point we ought to get into, but um, they had trouble with orphanages and some bad
Mhm.
situations before that were just um, devastating.
Mhm.
And we made sure that we went with an agency that supported those good practices, not the bad ones, and that made sure that
Right.
the kids were getting what they needed as much as possible and things like that. But it is a really eye-opening few decades over there with the adoption
It
story.
really is, and it wasn't the majority. I wanna say 10%, 15% were this shady practice, but
Okay.
there were identical twins that were born, and girls, and one of the girls they took to the city while they made money to pay the fine, the other was left with a grandparent, and that child had been abducted and
Mm.
adopted by a family in Texas and had a good adoption story, right?
Mhm.
But they were able to reunite later, and it's a beautiful book. I highly
Mm.
recommend it.
Okay, we're gonna add it to the reading list.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. I think coming into this interview, one of the misconceptions I had was that the baby scoop era ideas of the way adoption was handled, because Trish and I are both late 60s, early 70s
Mhm.
adoptions. She doesn't like me to say which. But I didn't realize that that was still similar in the 90s. I thought we were so much more progressive in the
I think
90s.
it was more progressive.
Yeah.
Like, I wasn't sent to a maternity home.
Okay.
I wasn't, told that I had to give this baby up. It was more, it's the right thing to do. So there was that manipulation,
Mhm.
and there was definitely the message that, being a single mom would be terrible for a child. That was prevalent.
Even from society.
Well, it's hard to know how engaged in society was I,
Right,
because I
at
was very
17.
involved in this very conservative church.
Church,
So
right.
that was a lot of my experience. But,
Did you did
Go
they
ahead.
try to force you to get married at all? Was there any pressure to have you and the father marry?
no, there was I think it came up, but I didn't ever feel that pressure, and I instinctively knew, like, here's what I knew about myself. I knew I didn't wanna marry him. I
Mhm,
just knew, like, "No, that's not the guy for me." And we actually broke up right after the baby was born, like, we just knew, "No,
mhm, mhm.
not a bad person, but just not."
Right.
Well, that
I
would
was
be
just
a
a
pretty
kid.
difficult thing to stay together through anyway. It's I would think akin to death of a child. It's so
Right.
life-changing, it
Yes.
would be hard to stay together even if you
Yeah,
wanted to.
yeah.
But I would expect churches to give support to unwed mothers who wanted to keep their babies.
Yeah,
And I do think that has improved a lot, and as the decades go by, there is more support and more financial, emotional, physical support than there has ever been. Now, do we still have a way to go? Yes.
yeah.
Is every situation different? As we always say, yes, every situation is different. You can't paint it with a super broad brush, but I am glad that things do seem to be improving, and um,
Mhm.
it's not such a life-changing shame as it used to be. It's not so hidden. There seems to be more support available for everybody in the
Mhm.
trial, which I think is good. I know a lot of adoptive parents get a bad rap for being, selfish and baby stealers and all that kind of thing. But I think there's a place. There's so many situations you can't paint any group with the same kind of brush. But I'm
Mhm,
very glad that again with the internet, social media has brought both good and bad supports, but we wouldn't be here. We'd have never met you. And that's a
Right.
wonderful thing to be able to do this and to be able to share with so many people,
mhm.
different experiences and different time periods, different situations. And I just really hope that we continue down the what's in everybody's best interest, not just the baby, not just the adoptive parents, but everybody, moms,
Yes.
dads, everybody,
Yes.
extended family. They
Mhm.
need support as well, because that's affecting them too. So I
Mhm.
Right.
think it's a really good thing.
So, Robyn, as we wrap it up, can you share what you think, um, some things that need to be implemented into the current system What are some ideas that you have that could be best for all parties involved?
I think, the librarian in me loves research, which is why I love Gretchen Sisson and the work that she's done around researching reproductive justice issues. I think everybody needs to be told the truth, right? That these statistics that, every story is unique, and yet there are some universal things that are just so real. And I think it's important that people go in, whether they're adopting a baby, relinquishing a baby, like go in with your eyes wide open that this is going to be the reality for you or for your child. I think that's really important. I think
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but we read everything we could get our hands on, good and bad, before we adopted China, on the Korean adoptees experience, other things like that, the primal wound, all those type of things. And our theory was plan for the worst, hope for the best.
Right.
And be prepared. It may not all be, one or the other, but at least if I know, I kind of know a direction to steer, and to be able to give them the things that the people that were in that situation before them didn't get.
Yeah.
And to make sure, as a group, that hopefully that would continue on, not just for my daughter, but for the other kids in that situation as well.
Right. And that you're not surprised when issues come up because you've educated yourself and kind of some of the pitfalls and the different things. I think the money piece is a big one, right? I'm still skeeved out by the amount of money that changes hands with adoption. I think it's wrong. There will always be children that are in need of parenting that cannot be parented by biological parents, right? There always is going to be a disconnect, maybe not as much or as little, but there will always be some. And so I think an ethical practice is not making that about money at all.
I agree.
Children are not a commodity.
I agree. I think that's a great point. And that gives us all something to think about because that's not actually what's happening here in America.
Right.
And I've started really researching adoption in other countries. And there are a lot of other countries that just no money is exchanged in adoption.
Never. And they also have better social structures, right? Or different social structures, I should say, that allow for more resources for moms. I remember somewhere on my journey, on Facebook, someone was raising money for a relative that was adopting, and they were trying to raise $20,000 for these fees. And I was going to donate because I'm that girl, right? And I'm like, wait a second, like $20,000? Like if this mom who's expecting this baby had $20,000, like could she keep the baby? And it just kind of turned it upside down of like, what are we doing? But I think we love to hate poor people in America and to think that moms that have more money are going to be better moms. And that's just not true. We can't make those generalizations anywhere. But yeah, I think the money piece needs to change.
I agree. Okay, so we're going to wind this up. This was great, Robyn. Maybe we can have you on again. Maybe we can do a book talk together. That would be fun.
I love it.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you for joining us on this episode of Found with Trish and Sherri, the podcast. And please like, share, and do all the things. And we look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye, Trish.
Bye, Sherri.